To our show this morning, all of our friends on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Scott isn't with us this morning. We'll see him next year, but we're joined by John Case. John, good to see you down there in West Virginia. And
Good to see
we
you.
got a lot to talk about this morning, but the first thing I want to do is wish everybody a happy holiday season and all the best for the new year. We think it's going to be a great year of struggle, 2023, and we are looking forward to working class and people's victories. Um, and but in order to win those victories, we have to have an accurate accounting and assessment of what's taking place in the country. Um, and also, I hope all of you get a whole bunch of presents, from your family and
Uh-huh.
comrades and friends. Speaking of presents, the big military corporations got a big present from Congress. $1 trillion in spending, new spending for the Defense Department appropriation for next year. $1 trillion. There were 855 billion, Rosanna, but that doesn't account for the spending on Ukraine, which is another, I don't know, 30, $40 billion. Mr. Zelensky was just here this week. And it's outrageous, Rosanna. I mean, it just
It's
keeps
not,
going up,
yeah.
up, up.
It's not just outrageous. It's disgusting. To see the homeless people out here in Los Angeles, living out in the streets, and for us in Los Angeles here in the West Coast, it's really cold. I know it's cold in other parts of the country, but it's really cold for us here. And to see them struggling, to know that there are children who are going hungry here in the United States. People don't have health care here in the United States. We need to ask ourselves, is that money really keeping us safe? Is that money really providing what we need by giving it to the war economy? The other thing is that people don't I don't think people realize that this money doesn't go to our military servicemen and women. It goes to the rich corporations that are building these armaments. And the servicemen and women that are having to apply for government assistance because they have food scarcity, because they are also suffering. They don't make enough money to make ends meet, and and I think that all of this is something that we, as citizens of this country or residents of this country, need to ask ourselves and really begin to push to shift this war budget. All of a sudden, there's money for the war, but not to provide health care, not to provide shelter, not to provide affordable housing and a livable wage. That's ridiculous, really, really ridiculous. And we need to ask ourselves: is all this spending, is it really keeping us safe, or is it putting us in greater danger? That's my
Anita,
rant for today.
my greater danger, in my opinion. Anita, my
Yeah.
figures may be off by 10 billion here or there, but they increased the budget 45 billion over what it was last year, which was way more than the Biden administration asked for. And that was the same amount that they had cut from the appropriation for the child tax credit.
Mm.
What's more important, feeding the military corporations or feeding children?
Well, you can see where their priorities are, definitely. But yeah, I think it was 45. I read somewhere 45 billion, or more than proposed by the White House, or million proposed more proposed by than proposed by Biden's administration this time. But yeah, you can see where their priorities are. It's not with, as Rosanna said, human needs. They are just interested in funding these giant corporations like General Dynamics and Huntington Ingalls and Raytheon. They're just raking in the big bucks, and their executives make a lot of money, and in turn, those corporations give a lot of money to candidates and to political action committees, and they spend a lot of money in lobbying. They're really engaged in keeping the spigot open in terms of more money coming in to the corporations like that. I want to second Rosanna's rant there. It's really ignoring human needs. If we're going to pool our money as human beings, or pool our resources as a society together, why would we spend our money this way? We need to take care of human needs first.
Anita, you keep saying they. Who are the they? It was a
Well,
bipartisan effort. I mean,
mhm.
last year, half of the Democrats joined with most of the Republicans to pass that, but above and beyond what the Biden administration asked for.
It
And
isn't a
this
democratic
year, huh?
It isn't a Democratic and Republican thing. There are yay votes and nay votes on both sides. It's a ruling class thing. I think it's the those lawmakers that are committed to that those big corporations, those weapons manufacturers. They're the ones who are pushing. They're working through both parties to maybe to better effect in one party than another, but this is a bigger than politics. It's a class struggle issue that's really at play here.
That's true, but John Case, it's the Biden administration which is pushing a Cold War 2.0 policy
Yes,
aggressively.
it is.
Am I right or wrong?
They're pushing a policy based on domination is the only path to security, rather than a path of collaboration and cooperation and peaceful coexistence, especially coming out of the pandemic when we see such a horrendous need for that. And further, it's a declaration that they're not going to really do anything about inflation that matters, since you're just going to put $1 trillion in circulation that's going to be spent on things that don't create any value. So I think it exposes that dark side of the neoliberal agenda, and you try to go one step forward, but the foreign policy and the imperialist things of these giant corporations and trillionaires pulls us right back into the mud. And it leaves the only solution to inflation, which is the Fed's solution, which is to raise interest rates until people start getting laid off and demand falls. That's what the consequence will be economically, I think.
Well, Sonny, they want the working class to pay, according to John Case, to cure inflation. Workers have to bear the onus of the burden. I
That's
mean,
why I say, this is our tax dollars. It's our tax dollars that are going into this military. So we have the power to stop this. We have the power by demanding that this money be spent on the needs that the U.S. residents residents of the United States need. And instead of that, we have the power to do that. We just have to join forces and organize ourselves in such a way that really gets that point across.
voters support reallocating 10% of the budget from war. Oh my God, that means defunding the military. Don't let the Republican and Democratic Party hear about that, Anita.
Yeah,
Oh, they'll
right.
want to pay.
But yeah, I hadn't seen those statistics, but it does seem that there. I think if people were better informed, there would be even more strongly supporting that cut in defense spending, because really it's such an inflated budget right now, and our human needs, like Rosanna pointed out, the unhoused in this country, suffering all across the country, and now with the cold, even it's life threatening to folks in the United States, and we really I'm sure more people would support a big cut if they knew how bloated that budget is.
Now, John Case, in the year before, half the Democratic caucus, and as I said, in the House, voted against that bipartisan increase. This time around, it was only 45 voted against. It's a step backwards. We need a new kind of movement on the ground and a new kind of uh, politics that elect more progressive and working class and democratic with a small d, even though some of them, probably most of them, will be in the Democratic Party at this point. But we also need radical reform of the electoral system because, you know, these budgets pass every year as easy as a greased pig sliding down Mount Olympus, Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro. I don't know if they have pigs in Kilimanjaro. I guess they have, those head. Anyway, you get the point I'm trying to make. What are we going to do about it?
Well, I think you got to relearn the principle that all politics is local, because it can be just intimidating as hell to try to take on the whole thing at once. You know, you have to look at the people in your community and area and find out how they can move, or the labor movement in the area. How can they move? What can they do something about? And how can they get better organized? And I think you keep coming on to the principle that it's very difficult to see anything other than an upsurge, a rebellion of sorts that could match this unbelievable mobilization of the media resources. Less than 10 billionaires own 90%, maybe more, of the information that everybody receives. And not only that, they're collecting trillions of profiles on us through the internet and all that other stuff, that they know more about us than the any government on earth. So it's there has to be a thing at the where you can touch and feel people at the local level. I believe that's the key, sparking the kind of resistance that can have some staying power.
Well, we got to condemn this bipartisan $1 trillion war budget. We got to condemn this Cold War 2.0. We've got to build a peace movement that transfers at least 10%, if not more, of the money from the military to the people. People support it, but unless there's a whole change in uh, how politics are conducted, and I agree with you, John, from the local level up, we're going to be in the same boat next year and the year after that. And yes, we need a mass people's rebellion because now we see that, speaking of war effort, Mr. Biden and Mr. Sullivan and company and are targeting Iran. They've joined forces with there's been a shift in the military policy now with the new Netanyahu coalition. And the planning, intelligence sharing, and all of that is now Israel is co-equal partner, at least formally, though I doubt they're co-equal actually. You know how U.S. imperialism rolls, and the Iran peace agreement and the agreement around reduction out the window. Anybody want to take a shot at it?
Hmm. Well, Joe, I
Go
think
ahead.
that what has emerged is this little video clip from a November 4th rally where Joe Biden said it's dead, but we don't want to announce that the agreement with Iran was that Trump ended and they were trying to restart. He said that's dead, but we're not going to announce that right now. I'm not sure that means. I don't know exactly what it means. I think it was kind of a throwaway line. I don't think it was Biden speaking from, a particular authority, stating that the White House policy. But there are a lot of things going on in Iran right now. But I think this Netanyahu's government, which links Netanyahu with the far right parties in Israel, is a really frightening development. And I think Palestinian folks are really afraid that there's going to be a resurgence of violence against them, I think it's going to be very dangerous, because Netanyahu and his cronies are really hankering for war against Iran. So we'll see how that plays out.
And all of this makes the fascist danger greater. It does. You know, you take what happened with the railway workers, now the military budget, it just turns off young people. It turns off the left. It makes people equivocate. I mean, not equivocate, but equate Democrats and the Republicans. They're all the same. And on certain issues, it's true. On other issues, it's not. And the difference between the Democrats and the fascist danger that the Republicans represent is minimized in the eyes of the broad public. And Rosanna, the the January 6th committee just made a referral, criminal referral of Mr. Trump and others to the Justice Department, and which is very important. It's the first time in history that happened. And let me ask you, do you think that the DOJ and the Attorney General are going to prosecute, or are they just going to let it slide again, in your opinion?
You know, I've had opinions before about Trump, and they've been wrong. You know, it's unbelievable that even he became president. Totally, to me, I thought for sure people would see the craziness, his craziness. But so I don't really want to say. I don't really know, actually. I don't have I don't feel a definite one way or the other. I think it is a very good step. They just reported that they, that he didn't pay any taxes I believe it was in 2020 or 2021. Uh, the guy is a billionaire supposedly and has paid no taxes. You know, that needs to outrage a lot of us that do pay taxes, that are, you know, biting our nails every time tax time comes around to see how much we have to pay, or how much less we're going to receive as a refund, and you've been counting on that refund and things like that. And this guy, and he's not the only one that doesn't pay any taxes. We need to demand it. I think, you know, we with all of this danger and stuff, we still we have to stay strong, and we have to understand that we do have the power, and we have to get together, organize ourselves, and demand what we rightly pay for, and demand what we rightly deserve and rightly need. So I don't think people should lose hope. We really do have the power. We just have to get together and organize it.
Well, John Case, that hotel owner back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, what was her name? Helmsley? She said it. Only poor people pay taxes. I mean, come
Well,
on.
of course. I don't think, I think the Trump thing will be decided the minute someone indicts him. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and we're going to see the consequences of his appointments
Hmm.
there or not at that point. And but I think I kept watch the circus around the whole thing around Trump now, and I'm just reminded of one of those famous diversions that was created in one of the movies where everybody in town and all the security forces are all focused on one event, and the bank robbers in the background figure out a way to heist everything while everyone's looking the other way. And I know that, and maybe that's wrong, but I just get that uneasy feeling about this whole situation here, given the consequences, the direction that Joe just outlined, about the militarization and this whole mobilization around the Cold War and the railroad workers. And then at the same time, oh, we're going to get Trump. We're going to get Trump. We're going to get Trump. Are we? Who's going to really be gotten in all this process? I'm
Who's
not
gonna
sure.
get who's gonna get who? Who's gonna get got? Who's gonna get got? Anita, I gave an outline of a report to our national committee, which is going to be on January the 14th.
Mhm.
Uh, John Case, we're going to meeting on January the 14th. but the question is to Anita. And I said, if it's not enough to leave the issue of prosecution to the prosecutors at the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and to the courts, there has to be a mass movement. A movement has to be built demanding prosecution. You know, if you just leave it in the hands of these small circles of ruling class elements, the problem that John Case just outlined, who's going to get got? We're going to get got. What do you
Right.
think?
Well, it's hard because there's no firm deadline. The indictment could always come next week or the next week after that. So it's hard. I think if he is, I've heard it said that he must be prosecuted to some extent, or that I think that movement for prosecution is bubbling beneath the surface, and it will come out if, as Illy Mistel wrote in The Nation, the prosecutors are too cowardly to carry through with the indictments. Because some of his point was, two of the indictments were very low-hanging fruit. It's clear Trump was breaking the law right in front of us and in public, and people will demand that that he be held accountable for those crimes. I think people will be very angry if he's not indicted. But the trouble is, when is the deadline for that? When is it's a moving target. So we'll see we'll see
Well,
what
there is a
happens.
deadline, kind of, sort of, because Trump has declared his candidacy for the nomination of the Republican Party for the presidency. And the closer it gets to the primaries, the more difficult it will become
Mhm.
to prosecute. So, Rosanna, they gotta, if they're gonna do it, they gotta do it before the primaries start, seems to me.
Yeah, they do. They have to, but we'll see. We'll see.
And how is that anger gonna be expressed, John Case? I mean, will it be in the form of petitions, letters to the editor, strikes, occupations, demonstrations, or will we sit behind our screens, whether it be on our phones or TVs or computers, and bitterly complain the way we're doing now, which
Well,
nobody
it's not.
will hear or pay any goddamn attention to?
Well, it's not going to be that way in West Virginia right now. Um, so I don't think. I don't think there's nothing that the Democrats are gaining nothing from, or very little from, the trials in West Virginia, and they have other problems that, like the absence of an actual economic development plan. Um, that are going to make it. We have a very good friend here locally, a state senator, got elected for 20 years, smart guy. He's probably going to run for governor. He might, and if he does, he won't be as a Democrat. It'll either be, it might be as an independent. It won't be. I don't think it'll be as a Republican. But the point is that the Democrats in the legislature don't think they can get anything at all done. Nothing. So I'm in a backward state. I don't want to depress you guys, but that's not going to happen here.
Well,
Oh,
there are GOP dominated states across the country. And, some are in the South and Deep South, Southeast, and Southwest. Some are in Ohio, Midwest, Anita.
Mhm.
It can change. I mean, Georgia showed that it can change. Stacey Abrams and them showed that it could change. But you got to build a grassroots working class, people centered politics from the ground up. Without that, it's politics as usual. And some of these Democrats will become independents and Some of the Republicans will become independents, but it'll be politics as usual. But there is room, and there is proof that with organization and mobilization and a clear putting forward of issues that are of vital interest to the lives of everyday working class people, that things can change. You know, one of the things that really impressed me, there was an article that's posted on the People's World website about the railway workers' struggle and their demand for sick days. And it tells the backstory about how the railway workers themselves, the rank and file, when they knew that the Democrats were going to sell them down the river and the Republicans had already done it a long time ago, they went to Congress themselves and they lobbied and they went to see. And by the way, a lot of these railway workers are craft unions, and the craft unions are conservative unions, and the memberships, big section, voted for the Republicans. They voted for Trump. And they were very surprised when Alexandria Ocasio Cortez said yes, and Bauman said yes, and Rashida Tlaib said yes, we will support you. And it changed some of their minds, you know, about the left and about the progressives. And now the issue of the 7 sick days has kind of become a point on the national agenda, not just for the railway workers, but for workers all over the country, which just shows you the importance of standing up and taking clear, courageous positions against politics as usual, against the sellouts, and that's what they were, and betrayals, and that's what they were. You got to say it, and stand up for justice and the right to be sick, and go see your kids. You know, take them out of school if they got a flu or a sore throat, not be penalized for it. For God's sake. Mailbag question. We got 2 or 3 minutes before we end the show. Dear comrades, what kind of question is this? True communism has nothing to do with LGBTQ rights or the environment. Carl and Fred, they never mentioned that. Issues is, they never talked about social justice. That's only issues added on by the liberals masquerading, Halloween masks on, masquerading as communists. Anita?
Yes, this is
Now, didn't you write an article on Karl Marx and the environment and what's the name of that phrase? Help me.
metabolic rift.
Metabolic rift.
That's right. That's the big gap between what needs to be done for the environment and what capitalism is able to do. And I mean, especially that this writer says Karl Marx never mentioned the environment. He had a whole theory and a whole empirical discussion about the way the chemical industries in Germany in the 1800s were wreaking havoc on the environment, and just not caring about the consequences. And he really showed that capitalism was unable to preserve the environment and to make sure that it's available for future generations. So I think that he did, and of course Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were concerned about the unity of the working class and the way the ruling class is dividing us up by sexual orientation or whatever, and pitting worker against worker. Really, that's something that is also central to our perspective. So I think I think the premises of this question are just coming from the wrong place.
is coming from a place of ignorance. Pick up a book and read it first before you reveal. But I mean, Rosanna, didn't Marx and Engels talk about the struggles of oppressed peoples for freedom? I mean, wasn't there that famous phrase in Capital? Labor in the white skin can't be free so long as labor in the black skin is branded. And we can extend that to the brown skin and the Asian skin. And I mean, they were concerned, our theory and practice was concerned about these issues from the beginning against colonialism and slavery and on and on and on.
Definitely. I think my question would be, well, what is their definition of true communism? And I think in that it'll reveal that it's all of these things. But I agree. Probably need to study a little bit more and think through what does true communism mean to them, because and they'll find that it's all of these things. It's
John
nothing
Case, Marxism
else.
is more than a dead letter in a book. It's an accumulation of theory and practice and propositions accumulated over, you know, next year will be the 175th anniversary of the manifesto. And isn't the living stuff of our doctrine in its methodology and practice? John
Well,
Case?
I think our methodology is but it's distinguished by dialectics on the one hand, which is has certain advantages over a static or metaphysical view, and by materialism, which seeks the answers to questions, in the real forces that are at work. And in particular, when Marx went to materialism, he went to economics to understand capitalist society and its foundations. And and one of the key things today is that, for example, the entire pandemic, from the standpoint of capitalist economics, is in what's called an externality, external to the whole thing. As far as the capitalist goes, you take care of that with a tax. Everything that happens that's bad can be covered with a tax. The internal system should pay no attention to that whatsoever. But Marx had a theory called capitalist reproduction, which said almost the same thing as bourgeois economics. But then he also had a theory called reproduction. It says, well, how does the system complete reproduce itself given the consequences of its production and the creation of classes in society and all the institutions that reflect those changes. And so in Marxism, the pandemic is not entirely a what do you call it, an externality, because there were many aspects of vaccine production and its private appropriation, public funding, private appropriation, that caused a great discontinuity in the effects across the world. So, the spread not entirely external to the capitalist system. So I think Marxism's great advantage there is to place economics in the context of its role in social development and consider the consequences, not just the model or the internal mechanism. Yeah, that's my thought on that.
We had a class on the party program 2 weeks ago in Minneapolis. And one of the things that the program points out is that there is, on the one side, the class struggle developed by Marx and Engels. And joined with it is the struggle for democracy, which was further developed by Lenin, and the interpenetration between the two, even though Marx and Engels dealt with both themselves. And we made the point that Lenin, when he, after Workers of the World Unite, that ends the manifesto, added and oppressed peoples, he joined together the struggle for democracy and the class struggle. Because when you talk about oppressed peoples, you're talking about the right of peoples to self-determination, the democratic rights, right of nations and peoples to determine their own destinies. And that includes women who are exploited, paid less, objects of sexual oppression. Uh, you know, it means black folk, it means Latino, it means LGBTQ. And these struggles are not identical, but they are intimately related, intimately. And so, gentle reader, go back to the source in the first place and find out what's there because you're wrong. And number two, think about the methodology and the tools of analysis and social practice that allow us to utilize this living scientific uh, process for changing the world to change the world. And just because Carl or Fred or Vladimir or Gus or Elizabeth Gurley Flynn or Claudia Jones, or Clara Zetkin or whoever it might be, didn't mention it. Gladys Marine from Chile didn't mention it. That doesn't mean that we can't mention it. In fact, we have to mention it because as things change, we have to apply our scientific, dialectical, materialist, as Kay said, analysis to things that are in motion. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in the 19th century. Stay strong, stay safe, have a happy new year. And we will see you after the 1st. I think it's January the 5th or January the 6th. Until then, John, thanks for coming. Anita, stay warm down there in Florida. Rosanna, we're going to send you a blanket for Christmas. And all the best to all of your families. And we'll see all of our comrades and friends on the picket line next year.
Right.
By the way, nurses in New York had a strike vote, 14, 15,000. And
Wow.
big struggles coming up next year.
Absolutely.
The Teamsters, the UPS were 250,000. The contract is up in June or July.
Yep.
Auto workers, contract up in September. It's going to be a big year of class and democratic struggle. Affirmative action. The Supreme Court's going to rule on it on September by June.
June.
So on is immigration, crisis on the border, and of course the struggle for reproductive rights. NARAL, they're going to be putting forward state ballot initiatives. We won six in the last cycle. So there's a lot for us to be involved in. We got to be knee deep in the struggle. Take care. See you next year.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
comrades.
You, sir.
Bye bye.
Wishing you and your family, Taryn, all the best. Take